Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. Now, the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children has kick-started, and undoubtedly you're going to be hearing lots about it on my future shows, my current and future shows, and from other programs right here on ITV, and it is our duty and our social responsibility to make sure that we bring these very important social messages to you. And if you are an abuser or a victim, then please watch closely, because there is something you can do about it. You can say no to violence, you can ask for the violence to stop, and you can seek legal recourse and legal help. You can make the violence go away by putting proper interventions in place. So we'll touch on that a little bit on the show this morning, and just to give you a rundown of what we're going to cover on the show, Lieto Khosa will be in studio. He is the Chief Editing Officer at Soweto TV, and he's here to talk about depression is real, and depression also happens to men. It's just that men will not own up to depression, but he's here to tell his story, and he's asking all men to please own up to depression and to seek help. But first up, a young inspirational speaker and writer. He's here to talk about his 2 ebooks. I'm sure that's what you refer to them as. He talks about inspiration, he talks about his life's journey, why he's on this path, and he talks about the concept of Kabbalah. What is that all about? How has that inspired him, and how does he believe it works? And more importantly, he talks about NLP, how you can change behaviors. Brian Cole is my guest, and he's here to share his story with us. Morning, welcome to the program.
Morning, Julie. Morning. Thank you very much for inviting me today. Thank you so much.
Great to have you here, because you're going to talk inspiration, you're going to talk motivation, you're going to talk your 2 books that you've written, you're going to talk about your life's journey, what's made you a success. But you've also heard me talking GBV. It's big news at the moment. The one issue I have with it is, why do we just kind of highlight it, towards the end of the year? It's something that should be top of mind all the time. Very especially in Black communities, Indian coloureds and Africans. We kind of almost believe that it's a man's right to lord it over the women in his household. And lording over would also sometimes mean that women are subject to violence in some form or the other. When we talk GBV, we're not only talking physical violence, we're talking sexual violence and harassment, we're talking emotional breakdown, and we're talking, and I guess that falls under emotional, is someone who rants, raves, screams, and is angry all the time, but takes it out on the less vulnerable, obviously. You're very active in this space. You also have a youth empowerment program. Before we get to your books and to NLP and Kabbalah, let's talk about your foundation.
My foundation basically is named after my boys. It's called Chaya and Zeus Foundation. Chaya is a Hebrew name meaning life, and Zeus, obviously we know it's a Greek god, so it's basically a godly life. So I'm trying to motivate young people, especially the youth, between obviously the age of 11 all the way to the 25, to actually live a really godly life. But godly life, I mean it from an internal perspective, knowing who they are, knowing what their mission is, setting their own goals and achieving from their own goals, because part of setting goals is to achieve. When you achieve, it gives you confidence, and when you grow with confidence, and knowing who you are, I mean, obviously it shows on the outside. Your deeds will definitely be different from somebody who is, like you said, not confident, and they end up doing other things that affect affect females or even their own peers and their own families. So if I believe, if you a young person and you have a mission, and you stick with it, and it just, you grow with it.
We're often told that people who don't feel good about themselves, people who have self-esteem issues, are the ones who end up being bullies.
Yes.
And very definitely when we look at the GBV issue, those people are your horrible outright bullies.
Yes.
They can't vent their anger, they don't know how to direct it in a healthy way, and they end up hitting and bashing up the most vulnerable in their households and societies. But that being said, very sadly, even if you want to give direction to the youth, your 11-year-olds upwards or even younger than that, you get very educated and professional men who may look really very upright, upstanding, pillars of strength in the society, and yet when they go home behind closed doors, they are the most horrible of monsters that you can come across. So that would then be about changing your behavior, but we'll get to that in a little while. What type of work are you doing with the youth? How long does the programs last? Because you can't have spurts of inspiration here and there and hope it's going to change them.
Yes. I work with 45 boys and girls. So there'd be, out of the 45, there'd be 35 girls, and there'd be about 10, there'd be 35 boys and there'd be 10 girls. So I have them coming to my house. That's how I run it for now. Every weekend, most often. Obviously, according to how busy I am, the more busy I am, the less I get to see them. But we do interact over social media, and I speak to them. Some of them I do give them a call, but I try as often as possible to be one-on-one with them, so it's not like they come once and that's it. So
how long has it been running, and do you have the same group of people that you're still working with?
I've had the same group of boys for the last 3 years.
Wow.
What had happened was I had found boys. I live in what they call the suburbs, so I'd found them. Boys from the location coming to the suburbs, looking there, wanting to come there to swim. So I'd found how they were treated, and I said, no one is allowed to treat any of you like that. So I took them in.
Because the moment you see someone come out of the townships to the suburbs, even if they're coming for healthy recreation, you immediately think they're here to come in. Absolutely, they're here to come and housebreak or invade or some such thing.
Yes. So I decided I love killing perception. I think perception is the number one killer of beauty, of beautiful things, you know. Because those are amazing boys. When I took them in, I said, guys, come swim at my house. I'm always bored. I'm always alone with my boys. Come swim. We swam. I started teaching them how to goal set, how to create a better image of themselves. Where do you see yourselves in the next 10 years? I started teaching them behavior. No, you don't act like this, because when you act like this, this is what happens. I started teaching them the most basic things. Cause and effect. Basic things, you know. I'm motivating them, helping them, say, guys, let's sit down and sit around and let's meditate and pray. Some of them have never even meditated and prayed, you know. And for me, and seeing that there's a brother who is actually there for them and love them.
So how long are you going to upkeep this?
You know, what we've done now, because we've registered now an MPO. So at first it was just a love for kids, and I want to help, I want to do this, I've got to spare time.
You want to make a difference.
I want to make a difference. So now we've registered an MPO. Now we're even going even bigger. We've brought in a couple of ladies in our call center, so we can call some of my friends and ask for some funding, so we can take some of these kids on excursions. For me, excursions are very critical in changing mindset. If you take a child who lives in a location, never seen God's window, and you let him go sit at God's window, watch God's, have that whole entire experience, take pictures and bring that home, he's inspired.
And realize there's a whole big world out there.
A whole big world out there.
How do you marry this concept with two issues, GBV, gender-based violence, because that's a very important message you need to leave them with, and the high unemployment rate in South Africa, because that's the reason why you're having a high, you know, I think it ties in very directly, high unemployment, high crime rates. And obviously the lost youth, because I think this is going to be the lost youth. We're going to look back in history and say, this was our lost generation. We, as the leaders, did not do enough.
You know, I've got an example. I was with a friend yesterday, and we were driving to my place. Just before we get to my place, we found these boys drunk, young boys drunk. My friend drives past, says, I want to show you these boys. She knows how I feel about the young boys. I want to show you these boys. Those boys, and she's like, this is our youth. I was thinking, in IR, how do you create, when this is about in our industry, this is a different revolution, how do you then take those boys, how would they match in that revolution? So I think your response, my response to your question is, I've got a book called My Self-Worth, My Net Worth. The reason why I wrote the book was because of that. It's a free book that anybody can download. I don't want to sell that book. It's very important for me because I believe if a young man, I want to start it from young. If you see your dad beating your mom, but you have a good self-esteem, you know how to set your own goals, and you know what you want in life, nothing will affect you. A positive person, a very well-developed person inside, not outside, inside. You can't break that person.
Because the converse of that is because we often are told that children role model their father's behavior.
Yes.
And you could have the most amazing father who could be a brilliant role model, and the child could still grow up being an
abuser,
or a lost cause,
a drug addict.
What goes wrong there? Why did that happen?
We don't take time to build ourselves. We expect, especially like you say, this is a lost generation. We expect someone to do something for us. Now, my self-worth, it actually asks you to do something for yourself. It says create who you are. If you create a good self-esteem, a good self-confidence, good self-respect, then you'll be a complete person. You'll be what we call Kabbalah. You'll be in equilibrium with yourself.
And and it's not about if I get married or if I get my dream job or if I have an opportunity to study, then I'll be a whole person, I'll feel better about myself, and I'll be a better person. It's not about other people making things better for you to be a better person. You've got to take ownership.
Truly, it's vice versa, Julie.
Let's hold that thought.
Thank you.
Brian Cole is my guest. We're talking, obviously, NLP, the 2 books he's written, how he is changing lives, and how you can download this particular book or books and make a difference in your own life. Don't wait for handouts from other people. Don't wait for other people to come into your life and help you make the difference. I guess that's a bonus, but it's up to you to be the change you want to see around you. Brian Cole is my guest. We've talked GBV, we've talked touching young people's lives. We've talked about being the change you want to see around you. You have to take responsibility. It's not about other people coming into your life and then you're going to change. It doesn't work that way. It ain't gonna work that way, because whatever problems you're sitting with, you're still going to take with you whoever comes along your journey. So Brian's now going to talk about NLP, which we've talked about many times on this show, but this time around he's going to tell us what's different about his program. He's written a memoir around this, and it's based on the Jewish mystical Kabbalah laws. So let's hear how that has gone for him and why he's chosen this route to introduce his NLP change process, not only for himself, but for the people around him.
Yes, Julie. The book is Kabbalah, right?
Mm-hmm. It's called Kabbalah.
It's called Kabbalah, the equilibrium of the mind, body, and soul. Basically, why the name? On Facebook, this is how it started from 2010, 29. Every time I put a status on, if I have to do a nice, beautiful, long status and motivate people, I would say Kabbalah. I would say in the beginning, basically, at first.
It really means in the beginning.
No, what it means is the whole mystic about it is the Kabbalah book was the first book ever written. So it's. But you know what me about the first and all that, I'm not very, very big on that. So I use the word Kabbalah based to say firstly, just to say firstly. So
your starting point.
My starting point. So Kabbalah, by the sense of saying the book is called Kabbalah, I'm saying by the starting point, but with the equilibrium of the mind, body and soul.
How does that tie in with NLP?
It does.
Because it's all about people and their self-esteem issues and their bad habits and their bad behaviors.
But now what the book does, it's a 60-day inspirational memoir. So what I decided was, each and every day you read the book, you actually literally peel off layers. So
It's a 60 page.
60 days.
60, so
60
each day you cover.
Each and every day you go through a process where you read the whole chapter for the day. I would
How
normally
long is
say,
the chapter?
You read. It's what I like. Some chapters will be just 2 paragraphs, and some chapters will be about 2 pages.
Okay.
So it
Easy enough.
Depending on the story. For example, I've got chapter 8 where I tell a story of a young girl when I was working at Spa. I was a manager at Spa, and I saw this girl posting posters at the bottom of the post. You know the street lights at the bottom of looking for a dog. I want my dog, but she doesn't say I want my dog. She says, doggy, when you see this picture, I know you will come home. When you see, so she keeps doing that. I asked the mother, what is she doing? Mother explains, no, she believes the dog will come home. 2 days later, the dog came home. So faith taught me faith. That little girl had so much faith that she doesn't want to ask people. She didn't want to speak she didn't tell people about the problem, but she spoke to the problem and say, problem, please come home, and I know you would come home. So
and the divine being intervened and sent the dog home.
And the dog came home. And
that's belief. And in Islam, we talk about sabr, patience. It's bigger than just the word patience, but we don't have time to go into that. It's belief and putting your trust in Almighty God.
With all that you have.
Absolutely. And things can and will change.
So my book is all about, so when you read the book, it takes you through a journey. Today you will read about an old man. Tomorrow it will teach you about vibration, that you're a vibrational being and you need to raise your frequency. But through the whole process, we actually do raise your frequency, because my book is not about changing your mindset. My book is about changing your frequency.
Okay, let me ask you a question around frequency. I've often been told, and also I'm sure you must have read and heard lectures by Deepak Chopra, where he talks about the type of frequency and vibration you put out into the universe. Do you buy into that concept where it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, if you put out very strong vibrations or positive frequencies, that's what you're going to get back?
I would love the audience or the watchers to actually find Abraham Hicks, to actually read or watch videos on YouTube from Abraham Hicks. I think Deepak Chopra, he touches a bit about it. He just touches a little bit about it. But where Abraham goes, she really goes deep about it. She actually channels into it. She'll teach you I'm a vibration. I live on vibration. If you got good vibration,
So what are you picking up from me?
You obviously, you've got an aura. You've got that aura. You've got a beautiful, peaceful, know who I am, confident aura.
Well, all I can say is Alhamdulillah, meaning I thank God for that. But that being said, so how long has this book been available as an ebook, or is that the correct terminology, ebook?
Yes.
How many people have actually downloaded it, and what sort of feedback have you got from it?
When I released the book 2017, I was working with an overseas international publisher. So what had happened was we started having problems between me and the publisher. So I had to take my work and hence I started my own Kabbalah. It's called Kabbalah Publishing Co., which everybody can go on Facebook and hopefully like it and support. If they want to write their own books, they can also come to me. I'll assist them to write their own books. But I actually did that because I was losing a lot of money, and I was losing a lot of know-how. I don't know what's happening with my book. I just wrote a book and I left it to another international person taking care of everything. Now I don't know what's going on. So I canceled that. I started my own publishing company, put the book on. So I would say relaunched it 2017 June. What's
in it for you? It's a 60-day book available freely on the net.
Yes.
Where do people go to download the book?
Now with the Kabbalah book, it's not for free. I stopped the sales for it because of those problems.
Okay.
Because I had issues. I will relaunch the book to next year, February.
So what is free?
For now, what you can download for free is myself with my net worth. I kind of felt
you've written that book.
That book is very important. I felt that before you can go through the Kabbalah book, you need to go through the my self-worth, my net worth.
How does one decide what's my self-worth and what's my net worth? Because that's what it's all about.
Yes.
And again, it has to do with self-esteem, about you as a brand. How do you promote the brand? How do you get people to buy into this concept of this brand that is Brian Co?
Yes.
And what is it that you're selling?
And my self-worth, my net worth. Listen, it says if your self-worth is higher than who you are, your net worth will always speak for you. It's impossible that you can be such a confident person, high in self-esteem. Because if you're high in self-esteem, if someone gives you a book, you'll finish it. If you're high in self-esteem and someone says there's an opportunity, you'll run for it. If you're high in self-esteem, you will do. So can you imagine what happens to your net worth? So I'm saying, guys, let's stop worrying about the net worth. Focus on your self-esteem, your worth. Focus on your worth. Work on your worth. Build your worth, your inner worth, not your outer wealth.
People are very damaged emotionally and otherwise. Again, I'm bringing the GBV issue. So obviously they've been damaged through that process. They've been abused all their life or most of their lives. How do they start building their net worth? How do they start believing themselves? How do they believe that they are special, that people will value them? And then another terminology that we hear a lot about is people say to you, first start loving yourself and then people love you. It's easier said than done. So quite a few questions. Respond to all of that I've given you. Damaged people. How do you build your self-esteem? How do you start loving yourself? What's that process?
Yes.
What is the process?
Silence. I always say, try be silent. Try meditation. Try be silent.
And tell yourself you're worthy.
Try be silent. When you are silent, it's like your brain will be like water filled with dust, and you leave it, and all the dust goes down, and the water is clear. You know, I need you to silence your brain so all the dust could go down and your brain is clear. Then you would know what issues you have. Because a lot of people have issues without knowing what issue it is. But now quiet your brain so you know, I have an issue with this. I remember this is what used to happen to me. I remember this is what I didn't like. Then we can start there. From there we say, have a plan. No, this is the type of person I want to be. I want to be a respectful person who doesn't hit or beat women. I'm not saying you didn't do it. If you did it, sorry you did. But this is the type of person. This is the type of person I want to be. I'm on a journey
of discovery and change.
Then from there, because you can't beat up yourself for the past. You can only move forward and move to the future with brighter intentions. With brighter intentions. This is who I am, and this is I take responsibility. But this is the person I want to be. Then from there, you can create what we call affirmations. Then you can affirm to yourself, I'm that person. I am that person. Does
it work? Affirmations in the shower or wherever?
Look, incantations do. There's an affirmation, there's an incantation. An affirmation is, I'm great. I'm great. Now, an incantation is, I am great. I feel this greatness in me. See, now you're speaking, you're putting all of your emotions, your feelings, all of it
energy.
That's the difference. That's the difference. See, but now if I'm saying I'm great, what energy am I putting in? But
you're not believing it. You don't believe yourself. Brian, we've come to the end of the interview. 2 minutes to summarize. Tell us in 2 minutes what it is that you want to leave our viewers with this morning. GBV, and how do you change to become a better version of yourself?
Julie, thank you so much. Thank you to the viewers. First of all, we all have good mistakes, positive, bad mistakes. We all make mistakes. So the main thing for now is to build from where we want to go. We understand we've hurt women as males. So now as males, we need to move forward and say this is the type of better version of males we want to create.
Females who've hurt men.
Or females who've hurt male, vice versa. But it's not about saying gender-based violence. It's about saying let's celebrate each other, create a different image in it. Instead of always crying, let's just laughing together. Let's try creating a different dialogue with each other instead of bashing each other up. Let's try and grow each other.
And underpinning all of that is self-respect and respect for others around you.
Let's create a good self-esteem.
Understand what's respect. The true meaning of respect.
If you respect self, can you imagine how can I respect? I will definitely respect you.
And you haven't answered my question
Yes, Julie.
on self-love,
Yes.
but it really is about respect. So if
Self-respect
you-
is self-love. Julie.
Absolutely.
It's loving. It's having a good self-esteem, having a good what we call good self-esteem, good self-motivation. Because it's those voices, those voices have to be good as well. Then you have self-respect. That all comes into you love yourself.
And on that very beautiful self-love concept, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you indeed for sharing with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Brian Coe, very motivational indeed. He's written 2 books, coming to talk to us about it. But we've also touched on the most important issue of the day, or for the next 16 days anyway, gender-based violence, and how you can regain your power by self-respect, self-love, and being the positive change that you want to see around you. Welcome back to the show, and we have the Chief Editing Officer from Soweto TV in studio with us. He is a journalist. He has even worked for a couple of years at Radio 702. Now, the reason I'm giving you all of this background information is to indicate that my guest is a highly qualified man, and he's in studio today to talk to us about depression. Depression, particularly in men, and depression is a real condition or a real disease. And if left unchecked, the consequences could be fatal, it could be disastrous, it could obviously devastate entire families and communities. So I'm so glad he's come in to own up to the fact that he suffers depression, and his several attempts at suicide. What exactly has brought him back from the brink of ending it all? And where is he now as far as his life, his healing, and his journey onward is concerned? And yes, real men do cry. Leeto Kosa, good morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you for extending the invite.
You're giving me a bright smile,
Yes.
but I do know that for years and years and years, you've suffered clinical depression.
Yes.
To the point where you have made 4 attempts on ending your life.
Yes.
What was so wrong? What went so wrong in your life that brought you to those very dark spaces? Or was yours just a typical situation of a chemical imbalance in your brain?
Well, for me, I think it has to, I was born in 1983, so, and I was born I was in Togoza when I was born. So my parents quickly separated after I was born. And so I was raised by my grandmother. And so growing up, my parents were never there.
You felt rejected.
Yes. So I grew up in my grandmother's house with a lot of others, cousins and siblings. And so there was not much attention given to all of us. But I think mine was very particular in the sense that I was your guy in the garden, the guy who had the kettles and all of that. But
why do you believe you were given such a lowly position in the family hierarchy?
I was different, I guess, because I was labeled from as young as 5 maybe or 6, for as long as I can remember, that I was an ugly child. So once people classify you like that, everything else that is considered to be too burdens or cumbersome to whatever to do, they would actually just offload it on your side to
because you were not termed as the black
Yes,
sheep
black
or the
sheep.
ugly child of the
Yes,
family.
yes.
You've carried that all the years, all these long years, you've carried it with you.
Yes.
Do you still feel like the ugly child?
I stopped last year because I had to I did a lot of introspection, and 2017 for me, 2018, and a bigger part of this year, taught me a lot about how to actually look from within and love myself, and don't go with what other people have actually always labeled me with, because environment actually taught me that I was not good enough, and as a result I would not go to school. I mean, I never, my family was not rich, so I didn't have shoes most of the time. I would walk barefoot. And so,
And you were teased about that as well,
I was
weren't you?
teased
You
a
were
lot.
teased about the fact that you were ugly,
Yes.
and the fact that you didn't have shoes.
Yes.
And that really damaged you in a big way. You stopped going to school.
I stopped going to school because there was no need for me to go to school, while other kids look okay, they're wearing shoes and, you know, nice uniform. They're in their uniform and I'm not. And it always sets you apart. And so because you're different, everyone else, actually, you become an easy target for people. And so as a child, you don't have the stamina to be able to carry all that. You sort of like find a way to stay away from the cliques and all of that. So that's how then different I then became, because also back in the
You
90s.
became a loner.
Yeah, back in the early 90s, mid 90s, if you were a child who didn't like going to school, that you would actually be labeled as like, you're not going to have a future and all of those things.
And you're
actually,
stupid.
It's
I hate
stupid,
using that
yes.
word, but that's the
Yes,
label that you're
that's-
given.
yes. So all of those pockets of rejections, when you put together, they sort of like leave clots in you, that everywhere you go, you get reminded. You get reminded that you're not good enough, you're not good looking, you all of these things. And that's the image you carry. But now, in order for you to be successful, it means you have to buy yourself out of that, meaning you need to use money. And if you don't have much of it, you would have to work twice as hard to get it.
So you're saying that to be accepted, you
Yes.
actually had to buy your way into being accepted.
Into being
Whether it was whatever relationship that was.
whatever relationship, including family. So you are a good person, you're helping your family. It gets to the point where if they don't see, you feel that they are not reciprocating the energy, then it begins to become too heavy for you. And if there is a tinge of ungratefulness that happens there as well, it breaks you, because you have created a tunnel where people can just come to you and ask for things, and then they never reciprocate the energy. It's always about them coming to take and take. So it gives them that sense of entitlement. And the minute when you begin to realize that
You're being taken advantage of.
yes, then that also breaks you even more. Because every time when there is a demand that is being put out, if you say no, that cannot be taken,
There's further rejection.
Yeah,
So really what you're saying is that you actually had to buy favors, to be invited for dinner, to be invited to a party, to be part of the clan,
friends, yes.
to be with friends. As long as you were the provider, you were accepted. Sadly, in your case, the depression was there as well.
Yes.
But sadly, that's the story with the world. It's
Yes.
the type of world we're living in. People find you acceptable and they embrace you in their circles, whether you suffer from depression or not. But you are, sadly, we live in a very manipulative, materialistic world,
Yes, yes.
where you are embraced and you're seen as this great guy or this great girl as long as you can entertain people.
Yes.
As long as you can feed people, you're great.
You're great.
If you stop the flow of money, you're a bad guy.
And
it happens all across society.
All across, my family experience has, for me, taught me a lot in terms of also doing things for people, assuming that they understand your financial position or they understand the emotions and everything else that you're trying to do, because that assumption would actually lead you into doing taking certain decisions, thinking that in the near future maybe this would be the outcome, but half the time those things will always set you back.
So really it's about the reality of life for you. You learned very early on life, is you're being used and abused.
Yes.
Because you carried these labels around you that you're ugly and you're stupid. And as long as you were able to buy your way into any situation, only then were you accepted.
Yeah.
When did you realize that all of this was causing you deep distress and eventually depression?
My depression started surfacing, maybe I would say, when I was at Vets from 2006, 2007.
Okay, let's just backtrack a bit.
Yeah. So
You talked about not attending school because you were
Yes.
poor and you were ugly.
yes.
And now you're talking about Wits.
Yeah. It's a huge jump, I know.
Yeah, it's a huge jump. What happened in the interim that you found yourself at Wits?
I studied, after some time, I spent about 5 years outside of school. So that would mean the people that I started schooling with in 1989 when we were doing Standard 1, they were like 5 years ahead of me. So when in 1999 actually, I decided to go back to school.
What made you make that decision?
There was this other teacher who said to me, I can only give you one chance, because also at the time, it was like I was the most wanted, because I would also be punished for not going to school at home. So I was just tired of running around. I was tired of maybe sleeping late at night and waking up early in the morning because my uncle would be waiting for me just to come and,
Give you a beating.
yeah, for not. So I was like, I'm tired of this, and the community has already labeled me as. Even when I went back to school, they were just like, he's just trying to, buy time. He's not really gonna go far, and so because there was no pressure on me to actually study, I found joy in just studying. And because I'm a bubbly child, I was a bubbly person, I would always have other kids around me and we would always have fun, and I would help them a lot. And that for me...
Again, it was the trade-off, isn't it? Because you used to help them with their homework.
Yes.
And because you did their homework for them, you were accepted into the clique.
Into the clique, and they will bring me lunch and all of that. And so it was a good mix, but...
Did you start feeling accepted at the time?
It was not even them accepting me per se. It was just saying that at the time we didn't even know it had anything to do with acceptance, because I was the only guy who could sort of like bring them together. I'm the guy who can actually bring enemies, sit on the same table, and after that I leave.
The mediator.
And without even saying a word. So I've always been that person. I would always try and draw some sketches around, and let's do some acting, and just to be able to show up in terms of my personality. But as soon as that happened, I then began to I gained momentum in terms of studying. That's when, as soon as I finished, because when I was 17, I was doing grade 7. So as old as I was, I said, let me then push and go get into high school. Then I got into high school.
What did that do for your self-esteem?
Already that alone began to boost my self-esteem.
Wow.
But at the same time, I had to guard it. I had to make sure that nobody sees what is happening, because should I make people aware that I am actually enjoying school, it's actually going to be the exact opposite of what everyone else thinks.
It's going to be taken away from you.
Yes.
Let's go for an ad break. Lieto Kosa is my guest. He's here to talk about depression is real. He suffers from clinical depression. He's attempted suicide 4 times in his life. We're going to go to that part of his life in a little while, but he's just giving us background information as to where and how he reached those very low points in his life and what pulled him back. So don't go away. Lots more to uncover on the show this morning, where we talk depression is real and real men do cry. Lieto Kosa is my guest. He's the Chief Editing Officer at Soweto TV, and he's talking about his years and years and years of depression, how he overcame. Now, even though he's in studio talking to me and he's really very together, doesn't mean that the depression has gone away. It just means that it's being properly managed through psychotherapy and, I should imagine, a good medical regimen. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, that's correct.
And keep at it, please.
Yeah, no, it's the most important thing is you need to know is modern therapy, you can do a lot of things, but you need a balance of therapy, you need the balance of that. And a lot of people that I've seen with depression is that you heavily rely on the pills, and then you don't do the work in terms of talking, going to your sessions, also being able to eat healthy and exercise in your mind. And so you just automatically expect the pills to actually be there just to be able to, and they're not going to do much if your state of mind is not stable enough and you've not reached the level of acceptance. Because immediately once you reach that's rock bottom. Once you're there, then you begin to build yourself up. But you do that with a lot of caution. Don't expose yourself too much to the people, because vulnerability needs a safer space.
And sadly, in our communities, mental health issues are not talked about. It's swept under the carpet. And very especially if a man comes out with his status and says, I'm suffering from depression or any mental health condition, he's judged and he's discarded, he's marginalized.
Yes. No, that happens. Look, it's culture and religion that will also tell you that men are strong, men cannot cry. And I think in the black community, itself, is that we are not medically trained or aware of the fact that your state of mind can get to the point where you're too depressed because of the accumulation of all cumulative stress and all these other things that you've gone through as a person.
Okay, you're done with your schooling back in Lesotho, am I right?
Yes.
So you now come to Johannesburg because you've passed your matric and you're pursuing a dream of a degree in journalism.
Yes.
How do you get to that place? And when did you realize in all of this that you're now on your road to success, but all of a sudden you realize that you're suffering from depression, or maybe didn't realize that you're deep in depression because you then decide that you want to end it all? Life is way too painful and you want to commit suicide.
Yes. No, the thing is, the only way for you to realize this is if change of environment will also teach you a lot about the energy that you receive and that you also get to leave behind you. Is that when I was still in Soweto, in my high school years, going into varsity, one of the things was, once I realized I was good, which was, for a lot of people, it was a shock that I actually been gone that far to finish matric and did so well. As soon as, because at home, they wanted me to be a policeman or go join the army, and I said no. I said yes, because that was also another form of black tax, saying this is what
Paying
you need to do. Now, from here, you must get something that will give you a job so that we can, because I was driving taxis in between. So when I got into the university, it was a different world altogether for me.
Frightening, strange?
Yeah, very strange, frightening. And when I got there, it allowed me some degree of freedom.
As well.
And then I began to pay attention to myself more than before. Even as much as this was a new environment, people started talking to me and greeting me. And then you'll always shrink in your own little corner, thinking that maybe that was just a fluke. But you see people coming to you more. Your opinion, even though you can't speak English well, because that was actually why my biggest challenge and fear was the fact that when I got to Wales, I couldn't speak English.
And the person that inspired you most and you learned English through was listening to John Robbie on the 702 show, on 702.
Yes.
So he had a huge impact on your life, and then your one dream was to become a talk show host on 702.
Yes.
Before we get there, when did you realize that you are suffering from depression?
It was late 2006, but
whilst at university.
And
that was your first suicide attempt.
That was my.
What pushed you there? What was going through your mind?
It was that I realized in 2006. Then we got into 2007. So 2007 was very heavy because it was my second year, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was also thinking that maybe I should just quit, go and look for a job because this environment is too heavy for me. But you're going through a period of transformation. I was now beginning to be so uncomfortable in the fact that I was no longer living in that space. So I felt, because I've always had that you know, when you cling to your problems, when you cling to poverty, you know, it felt like it was a right space now because I was in this unknown space, and a lot of things go. And if you're struggling with identity as well, that was for me a problem. So when I went on that particular night, I had actually gone into, there's a pool by the Matrix where we buy food. That's where I had
on campus.
On campus, I had actually gone in there to try and drown myself in there, but the security guard was there.
You?
There was a security guard who actually noticed me walking in, and that somehow he could tell that I was not okay. But he started talking to me about soccer. And for that 5 minutes, he actually just diluted the whole process. And then after that 5 minutes, I felt a bit horrible to say, man, I can't believe I wanted to do this. The plan has been interrupted. But something in you still tells you maybe you can come back again tomorrow. But as soon as you leave that space, because there's one thing about depression is that when you get to that point of wanting to kill yourself, the only thing that you do is you sit down and you look at who would be more hurt and who would cry more if I were to leave now. We look at your family, be like, no. You look at other people, be like, no. So it's not that you
felt that nobody.
Nah, you're
you
not
don't
going
matter
to be.
in anybody's life.
You don't matter, so it's not a loss to them.
Did it frighten you, and did you think you need to go for clinical help?
Nah, at the time you're just thinking it's to kill yourself. It's that. So you're in and out of it. But because you don't have an established structure that says this is depression, this is what you must go through. And remember, when that happens, you're still going through a lot of denial stage as well, because you can't be depressed. You're a black man, you're strong, so you can't, you must be lazy, so you must always understand that you must endure pain. You must be strong enough to not let other people know how you feel, because I used to do this a lot, and I still do it. I would go to my friends and talk to them, and I would become so emotional, and then they will be so uncomfortable and not know whether to hug me or to do, because you're not used to seeing a guy talking to you and then he all of a sudden cries. Because when you cry, as soon as you begin to open that space, all these emotions just come flooding. So you might not even be articulate in trying to speak about your pain. But what happens, most of the reason what I understand is that why that energy gets misunderstood is even the person that you're trying to be so vulnerable to, this person is not equipped. This person is not on the level to receive that information. So it's... Instead
of helping you, they hinder the process.
And it makes you feel a bit empty when they are gone, because some of it, when once being digested, it might be digested in a negative tone, and then
you're being judged.
You hear the very same thing as you're trying to be, weak to this person. Your vulnerable points are now being used as a gossip.
That, and also, I don't know if you've ever heard, because you had four
Yes.
suicide attempts. Get over yourself.
Yes.
You're a man. Goodness me.
Yeah.
Just get over it. It can't be that serious.
And the thing is also, you can also get into a space where you talk to a female. They would somehow be able to absorb you. But in doing so, in your head, you misconstrue that and think this person loves you.
Ooh.
And then once you take that in, and then you go ahead with that misconception, the minute when you try now to get into everything else, and then they tell you that, no.
Double rejection.
That's now you suffer that. And immediately when you suffer that, you cut ties with that person. And so you never see a lot of these things coming. So you become a very vulnerable individual in between the spaces. But at the same time, that form of rejection, you still want to make sure that they don't feel bad.
But it pushes you deeper into depression, does it not?
It does. It pushes you deeper, and it puts you in complete isolation.
All right. We're going to go for an ad break in a minute or two. We've got one segment left to fill. We're going to talk about your journey to 702,
yes.
How you made it big in the world, and then your 3 subsequent suicide attempts,
yes.
Where you're at in your life now. How important is that you carry on with your treatment plan.
Yes.
Depression is real. As you can hear, this is the Chief Editing Officer at Soweto TV. He spent about 6 years at Radio 702 as a producer. He's made it in life. He's made it big. And yet, he suffers from depression. And he has made 4 attempts on his life. So yes, real men and big men do cry. And they do need help. And they do need to go into therapy. Lieto Kosa is in studio. He suffers from depression and is here to tell us his story. We're into the final segment of the show this morning. It's very important for you to share your suicide attempts with us. But just before we get there, you then overcame the first suicide attempt. You didn't take it seriously enough. You didn't go for therapy or anything. But in between all of that, you realized that you didn't have a good grasp of the English language. You started listening to Radio 702 and John Robbie was your hero. You also decided that you wanted to work there. Tell us about your approach to 702, what happened and how you finally landed up with a job there.
In 2006, around June, they were on campus just, looking for
new
talents, and then I just jumped. I was on the queue, and then I got there because I see radio. I want to be a journalist. I want to be all of that. And then I got there. They gave me a script just to read news and to speak. It was so difficult because they make it, when you're listening, it sounds so easy. It was difficult even with a written script. And then the lady looked at me and said, there's no way with that English that you're going to work for us. Please try something else. And that was that. I was crushed,
Absolutely.
And then for some reason I left, but I said, something in me said, nah, don't worry, you're going to go back there. But because...
And then when did you start listening to John Robbie regularly? Was it after that rejection?
It was, in fact, the reason why that made me go there, I had just started listening to John Robbie, I think about 2-3 months before then.
Okay.
So I knew who they were, and I said, this is the radio that I always wanted to work for. And then, because what I used to do is that I struggled with English, so I would listen to John Robbie in the morning, listen to all the talking points, write down all the nice words and all of these things, and do my research around that. And that helped me.
Find out what it means,
yes,
etc.
because I did humanities, so you write lots of essays, so there's a lot of terminology that is heavy that you need to know. So I think on the John Robbie show, he was able to articulate a lot of issues, and I would always read Mail and Guardian. So those were the tools that I used. So for me to work for 702, to work for Eyewitness News was like, I want to work there because this is a good space for one to be able to learn.
And you pursued that dream, but in between all of that, you had 2 relationships which subsequently broke down.
Yes.
You have 3 children out of those relationships.
Yes.
And in your mind, your troubles had not ended. You were continuing to feel rejected, and you decided you wanted to end it all.
Yes.
Tell us about your subsequent suicide attempts.
When you're trying all you can, you can academically do well, get a job, but as soon as you're pouring from an empty cup, as soon as you've not looked deep within to say, this is who I am and I'm dying, and the people don't know that, but you just have to go. So it meant also that I had relationships that were not genuinely based on solid grounds, because I had still needed to buy my way into any of them. But sometimes the time you realize that it's too late to end it, there is a child involved. And that on its own was, the public scrutiny was high at the time. So you suffer a double dose of, stress and depression. And I remember the one that I think took me longest to deal with was the fact that I had a first child. I was not happy with the circumstances around how that child was born. And I tried to cover it up by trying to marry the mother. And it didn't work out. 6 months later, I was out. The same thing happened after that. Soon after that, few months later, I met someone else, and that lady was also pregnant. I had not even dealt with
the first issue.
The guilt. You see, guilt will pin you down. I I had not dealt with the guilt from the first child. Now the second one is there. So people can easily say, you are the guy you were the problem in all of these things. And one of the most bravest suicide attempt that I wanted to do was when I wanted to drown myself and my kids in the car.
The 3 kids, and you're in a car and you're going to
Yes.
drive into a lake.
Into a lake and just end it all because...
Why did you want to take the kids? You know, we often hear about these family murders or these family suicides.
Yes.
And the way we as the general public react
You
to
judge,
that is, what a selfish person. Fine, if he felt his life was worthless, why didn't he take his own life? Why take innocent children with him? And how selfish of him that he's punished all the people that he's left behind. That's our general reaction to it.
Yes.
What was going through your mind?
Especially if you have not dealt with this thing, is that your kids, for as long as you've not made peace with the fact that you have kids and all of those things, you're still using guilt. Nothing about your kids will give you peace, no matter how hard you can pretend. So anything that has to do with the mother of the child and the kid will always be a stress for you. But that's your reality that you've created. But because you've not accepted the responsibility for it, it's going to remain a problem. And the longer you let it linger, then it grows as well, because you leave issues unattended.
Right. How was that suicide attempt? Why did it fail? And when did you realize you're in serious trouble and you need to go for help?
The thing is, when you do that, you're trying to just sort of like eliminate everything else that you came with as a person, to say, this is my problems, my stress that I'm taking out.
No one's going to miss me.
No one, yes. So you're not selfish in that regard. But the thing is, that makes you feel in this way is that you just want to take yourself out of the equation and make sure that you disappear with
and
that.
And people will be happy without you around.
Yes, because the people that you talk to half the time, they judge you anyway. So it's not much that, because you see people die all the time. 2 weeks later, we keep quiet and life goes on.
2 days later or 3 days later, life goes on.
Life goes on. So after that, I started...
What stopped you from going through with the suicide?
There were people cleaning around. So that was just a stroke of luck for me. I think it was also divine intervention, because at the time, there were just people cleaning. And as I waited, the kids got out of the car and started playing around. And that moment for me broke me, because I saw how happy they were. They thought Daddy just, brought us into this nice place to have fun. And then I began to cry, but they were far from me. Then I began to see that, I could have done something that was very, 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 very sad. That could have actually broke a lot of people.
So you realized then that you're in deep depression.
Yes.
Did you then go for help?
I went for help, which was not adequate at the time, because I was still again in denials mode, and to say I can go, but when you're not constant, when you're not consistent,
I'm a man, I can get over this.
Or sometimes this is the thing, when someone tells you the stuff, and then you can relate a lot to that. What you do then is that you say, oh, thank you for making me aware, then you go away. 6 months later, you're struggling again with that very same thing. But because someone made you aware now and you know about it, but you didn't do anything, it then means you have to go back. Mm-hmm. And when you go back, they have to start you again from... And you don't have the patience also to deal with the fact that they want to take you step by step.
And it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's mentally and physically draining.
And
so tell us about, before we get back to when you reached out for help, when you went to 702, when did that happen for you? And was your healing happening simultaneously?
When I went to 702, I was actually still way deep into my problems.
And despite that, you got the job?
I got the job and everything else.
How did you get the job? They told you were not good enough?
6 years later, I got a call from a friend of mine who said, hey, there's a friend of mine who's looking for writers. I know you're a good writer. So they said, I didn't even know it was them. And I was like, send them my CV, I will see. 2 hours later, I got a call from a guy. Hey, my name is so-and-so. This is what I want. I'm looking for someone. In my first interview, I think I was hired because I was just too good. I went into that.
Good on you.
Because I worked in there and said, oh, this is the place. This is, this is my place. Oh, and then I started, my interview was more like a conversation. And then that's...
And you got the job.
I got the job.
Having got your dream job, did that change your situation in terms of the depression? Did that make you feel better, or did you realize, despite the fact that I managed to land my dream job, things are going well, I'm earning big money, I'm able to look after myself and my children?
You see, that's the thing. People think when you work for these big companies, you earn more money. And you see, that's another layer of stress and depression, because the fact that you work for 702
doesn't equate to big bucks.
Thank you. And so the expectation
Yes.
that you were there, even from family and friends, people ask you for favors, and if you've always been a person like me who wants to
please everyone,
people, you would overpromise people. You would not tell the people the reality of the fact that I'm here, but I'm just also a small fish here. I'm not.
But the fact of the matter is, I think it's prestigious enough to be associated with a big name like that.
And so that frustrated me a bit, but it was a good opportunity.
Right.
But again, you can't celebrate it with a lot of people, because the people around you don't even understand.
You've given us a beautiful sketch of your life up to now. When did you now decide that if I don't do anything about my depression, if I don't go for medical intervention, it might be too late for me, or one of the days without me even realizing I'm going to end it all?
It was late last year that I decided.
After all of that time.
After all those stuff.
And you suffered a lot, did you not?
Yes, I did. I remember when the humiliation I suffered when I was telling my family that I'm no longer going to support you. That was the biggest, because these are the people that I was always, I always had this ball of fear in me to say, I don't want to tell them. If I do, they're going to criticize. That was the first. After that...
we've got 2 minutes to wrap up, so if you could just rush it a bit.
Yeah, so then in early this year, I decided then that, you know what, I think in February, for me, this is the time I needed to go in. And I went in, even though I had actually attempted another suicide at the time. But I went in, and then I was like, I need to face this issue.
So it's psychotherapy and meds. How has your life changed? What's your frame of mind like?
My frame of mind is very light, because it allows me to also now pay attention to a lot of things, and I'm paying attention to self now. I'm not giving myself out. I'm still doing a lot of things in isolation, correcting a lot of things, so it's a new space for me, and it's a good space, because
you feel you're healing.
You feel you're healing. You share your story, it makes you heal, and then you want to raise the awareness and say to other people, look out, there's depression, you need to be careful, and please take care of yourselves.
By way of this interview this morning, you're definitely on the path of healing. That's not to say that you're completely healed.
Yes.
That's not to say that you're not going to, please God, no, but that is not to say
yes.
that you're not going to make another attempt on your life. What is the strong message you want to give out to men and women, very especially men, that it's okay to cry and it's okay to ask for help, and if they're in a dark space, what should they do?
I think I just want to encourage men in particular to cultivate the culture of being able to be open, to talk, because half the time we don't talk. We just an enablers of bad behavior more than good behavior. The ones that call us out, we always cut them out, because we don't want somebody holding us accountable to that level. And it will be much easier, because the approach we use to women as well, it's manipulative. Once you know who you are, you won't use any manipulative means to get to something. It's easier when people receive you for who you are than when they're not, because as soon as they discover who you are, you think they hate you and whatnot, but they don't. It's just out of disappointment.
We'll have to end it there. The importance of psychotherapy and medical attention.
Yes.
You can't overemphasize it enough.
No, that's very important. That's very important. Whether you have medical aid or you don't, that's very important, because there are other organizations out there who are doing this thing for free, and they need people to get out of their homes and be able to go out and get that help.
Good on you. May God continue your path of healing and stay strong.
Thank you.
That was Leto Kosa talking to us about depression. Real men do cry. Suicide and depression is real. If you feel that you're in a dark space, please seek the medical attention that you require and start your journey of healing. That's where we leave it for this morning. Thank you for your company. Till Saturday morning, as always, take care on the roads. And as always, it is a Khud Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.